I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our live question and answer class. In this class, we always start with a topic at the beginning, something that's been requested or something that's useful for viewers, but you can put your questions in the chat at any time or in the comments if you're watching as a replay, and I'll turn to your questions in a moment. At the start today, I'd like to look at the following words: pens, pans, pants, pains, and paints. This was a request from a viewer, and I think the similarities in these words, the different vowel sounds, the what to say for letter S, these are all things that we can cover to help you say these words accurately, and also to learn more about these sounds in general, not just in these words. So in the word pens, like I have several pens to write with, the letter E is the typical pronunciation of letter E when it's by itself in English, which is the eh sound. I call that the red tent vowel. And the mouth is not very open for eh when I say pens, pens. I keep my tongue kind of flat, mouth not too open. There's not much I would change in terms of the spelling, but I will write a Z for the end because the letter S on pens, the plural, is a Z sound. It doesn't have to be a strong Z. I don't have to say pens. But if I'm linking, for example, my pens are all blue, my pens are here, you'll hear that Z links and connects together. The only thing I want to avoid is a strong S. I don't want to say pens. It'll sound accented and unusual. If I'm just saying pens by itself, pens, pens, the Z shows up as kind of a very light S sound. So not a strong S or a strong Z unless I'm linking. Same thing for the word pans. We have the same letter S saying the Z sound, but now we have the A vowel. And again, no spelling change because typically letter A does say A in English. I call it the black cat vowel. The difference between pens and pans is that for pans, I'm opening a little bit more. So pens, pans. I talk about this eh and ah contrast in many videos, and I have a video specifically about men and man because that's one that people often find difficult to make that distinction clearly, to hear that clearly. Just know that for when we have an n sound for these front vowels, pen and pan, that if I'm saying, for example, mad, pan, that my ah in that or mad might sound a little bit more open than my ah in man or pan. That's because the n sound makes the ah a little bit more nasalized, a little bit more closed. You don't have to intentionally make a different vowel here though. If you're just going for the same ah vowel that you have in that pan, the presence of the n will naturally change the vowel, so I don't need to try to change it. So if you feel like, oh, it's not coming out like an ah, it's not the same as in that, that's okay. You just don't want it to become a completely different vowel. Just go for the ah sound and that amount of openness and know that it'll naturally be higher and more nasal because of the n. So pens and pans. Then when we get to pants, we have the addition of the t sound. So pans versus pants. In pants, I'm going to be shorter on my vowel in terms of duration. It's still the same vowel sound, but now when I have the n's, both of those are continuing sound. Pans, pans. So I have a nice long time to hold that vowel. But when I'm saying pants, pants, it's a little bit shorter because the t is a stopping sound. So my t in pants goes right to this sound here, pants, pants. It's almost like you don't really hear the T because I'm not releasing it. I'm not saying pants, right? The T goes right to this pants, pants. But it's not the same as pans because first of all, we have the S sound here, not Z sound. And second of all, the vowel and the N sound are much shorter in pants than they are in pans, pans. You can hear that, pans, pants, pants. So even though you might just be hearing the n sound and the s sound, pants, pants, the presence of the T there makes this very short and this longer, pants. And then same thing with pains and paints. These have a different vowel, but the same concept of a longer duration here because of the n's being a continuing sound, and then paints being relatively short and that vowel being shorter. It is a longer vowel. AI says the A diphthong here, same thing that we have in a word like day or say. You again might notice when I say pains, pains, that it might be a little harder for you to do the A diphthong when the N is following. So practice it like pay or say, where you can have time to do that open gliding A. So it's a little bit more open than the eh, not as open as the ah, but it glides and closes. Pay, A. So that's a diphthong vowel. Pay and pains, pains. You have some time there to do your A vowel. And then again, we have the letter S saying the Z sound here. Whereas in paints, paints, we still need that A diphthong, that length and gliding, but we don't have as much time because we again have our short, our T making the duration shorter. And then we, because of the T, letter T, the letter S says the S sound, so paints. So pains and paints. He pains to do it, he paints it. Okay, so once you can say these words by themselves, do try practicing them in some short phrases. What you might find is it's helpful to match them with other words with the same vowel sound if the vowel is what's giving you difficulty here. So for example, I could say red pens, had pans, had pants, say pains, day paints, etc. So just using those to help guide you with the vowels. Often you'll notice you don't have any difficulty with the difference in vowels between read and had, just because you're not, the rest of the word is not as similar. Whereas in pens and pans, you might find that more challenging. So you can use red pens to match and had pans to match, for example. You can get more help for the vowels, all of the vowels, and all of the sounds of English in our Sounds of English course on speechmodification.com. It's going to walk you through these and the rest of the vowel sounds, how they're spelled, what words they're in, what accent error patterns you may have, and it's going to help you work out those types of details, as well as letters S and Z, what they say. It's a great way to build a strong foundation to pronounce any word you need to easily and fluently in English, and it's on our website, speechmodification.com. It's called the Sounds of English course. I hope you'll check it out. Of course, there's many more resources here on the channel for these sounds as well, including the videos I mentioned earlier, and you can check out our vowels playlist and our Sounds of English playlist here on the channel as well. Okay, great. Welcome everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here this morning. Not our usual morning, but I've had some conflicts with other responsibilities on Saturdays, so thank you for the flexibility. Welcome. We have a question about the word pregnant. So let's check out that word. In pregnant, we have first syllable stress. Again, there's our eh vowel like in red tent that we had in pens. And we have the g sound, but we don't really say preg. We don't let that g out. So I go from the pregnant. I use basically what's called an unreleased stop consonant here, preg. I close off either in my throat or lifting the back of my tongue for that g sound. And then I just release right into the n of the next syllable. And then since the second syllable is unstressed, we're not saying an ah or any clear vowel here for the letter A. It's just an nt, pregnant, pregnant. So I wrote it as a schwa here, but you're almost just going nun, nun, with a little I or a short little sound between your two n sounds. So I would rewrite that, respell that as preg, with an unreleased G, pregnant. almost like no vowel in the second syllable, pregnant. She's very happy that she's pregnant. Yeah, good word. Thank you for that request. Okay, we have a question about bunched R or retroflex R when I'm pronouncing initial R, stressed and unstressed fr, tr, and dra. Okay, so we have two different ways that people make the sound in English, and you can use bunched or retroflex R in all of the different positions. But typically people use some different range depending on the context. So for example, in a word like, let's do like friendlier. Here we have the fr sound, the unstressed at the end, this one that you mentioned, and the fr. When I do friendlier, I feel like my is pretty far pulled back, friendlier. For me, the bunched R is easier than the retroflex R, that curled R. I think the only time I use a curled R is if I'm doing maybe like a like a try. I don't think that I ever use a fully retroflex R. Most of the time I'm based in the bunched R, and then the retroflex kind of comes in depending on context. So you can experiment with what's easier for you. Retroflex just means the front of the tongue is curling up, but the back of the tongue in both should be kind of anchored against these teeth here. So it's sort of more, do I get that anchoring from bunching and dragging the tongue back, and the tip is down, or curling and making more of a cup, but still stressing, still pressing the sides of my tongue against the insides of my upper teeth. I do have a video about bunched R and retroflex R. So it's really going to be about the context of where you're speaking. And if one, you can use any of them. I think the challenge with the retroflex R is that sometimes if your tendency is to have a rolled R in your native language where the front of the tongue is going and lifting up, then that retroflex R might sneak into a rolled R in certain contexts, especially like with TR, that you might end up with tr instead of tra. You can hear my retroflex R is not very good. That was me trying to do the retroflex. So when I say try, I don't think I'm really using much of a retroflex R in any of those contexts. So even for like in bird, or drive, or just ride, I think mostly I use bunched R. I tend to teach that too, but I think when I'm working with someone one-on-one, they will naturally gravitate towards one or the other. If they can't do either, then I usually teach bunched R because you can go there from the the KR or GR sounds. But for some people, the retroflex R is more similar to the rolled R, and it's easier for them to pull into that curled position. Native speakers use a mix of both. And I think, again, depending on context, we use lots of different R sounds. So no great answers for your question because there's not one right way to do it. But it's really good to experiment, and you may find, oh, okay, in this case, I tend to use one or the other, or only one really works for you. Thank you. Okay, we have a question about conceited and conceited. And as you can hear, when I say those two, I basically say them the same. So that's because in both these words, the final T and the final, or this T and this D are flap sounds. So when I say conceited, I'm going to use that flap for DED and TED. That's true for things like excited, invited, needed. Anytime I'm adding the ED, because the word ends with a T or a D to make it past tense or to make it the adjective, that these will be a flap sound. So it's not a T or a D, it's just a light lift of the tongue, conceited. He's very conceited. She conceded the race. Basically exactly the same. So yeah, great question. Thank you for that. Okay, we have a question about setting and set. So for setting, here's another example of the flap T. Same thing with T's and D's both in the middle. So bedding, like with two T's, and bedding with two D's, both have that flap sound. For this, again, we have our vowel that we had in the beginning in pens, first syllable stress, and then the NG sound. So I would think about it like light D or flat setting. And when we're talking about just set, you can hear I that time used an aspirated T, set, a light little T at the end, or you might hear it just as set with an unreleased T sound. So how we say the T at the end depends on what's next. If there's a vowel following, like in setting, it's going to be a flap sound. If I were saying set that down, set some things on the table, I'm going to use an unreleased T and go right into the consonant sound. Or if there's a vowel, set it, set it over there, it's going to turn again to that flap sound like the light D. Set it there, set that down, etc. Yeah, great words. Thank you for that request. Okay, we have a question about the name Aristotle. First I'll get to, sorry, that's coming up next. Great questions here. So let's take a look at when to use thanks, thank, and thank you. So you can use thank you or thanks. These are interchangeable. I'd say this one's a little more formal. This one's a little more casual. So if you're in a job interview and you want to thank them for giving time, you might say thank you for your time today. Thank you for this opportunity. If you're talking with a friend and they buy your lunch, you might say thanks. You can use both, though, in either case. This is not unprofessional. It's just a little bit, I would say this is a little bit more serious and this is a little bit more casual. And then just thank. We never use that by itself. It's a verb, though. So I need to thank her. I need to thank him. Yeah. Basically, it's if we're using these two, it's when we're actually thanking someone. I say thank you or I say thanks. When I'm talking about this, it's the verb for he thanked me. I need to thank her, etc. Okay, yeah, great question. Thank you, and thank you for being a channel member. I appreciate your support. Okay, I have a question about hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. I'm not sure that that's the spelling. It might have the EU at the end, but the pronunciation is, we have secondary stress here, high. So we do have the diphthong high, but it's not stressed. And then the pa syllable is stressed. So letter O says the ah vowel, hypoten. And then you can say hypotenuse with a true T, hypotenuse, but most native speakers will use a stop T here and a syllabic N. So it sounds like hypotenuse, where we'll kind of have not really let that T out. I'll write this with an ah. Hypotenuse. Or ooze, hypotenuse, was sound at the end. So the hypotenuse of the triangle, hypotenuse. Yeah, okay, good question. Thank you for that one. And we now back to Aristotle. So Aristotle in English, Aristotle or Aristotle. Typically we would say this the same as like little or turtle, where we would use a flap and a syllabic L. So Aristotle. And then for Aristotelian. Yeah, I guess Aristotelian, Aristotelian. I don't know. I've never used that term, so I would say it's either Aristotelian or Aristotelian. Aristotelian. So we would probably stress on the tel syllable. I can look that one up in the dictionary and get back to you. But yeah, thank you for that request. Okay. We have a question about the brands, mentholatum and Vicks Vapor Rub. So Vicks Vapor Rub, that takes me back to my childhood. We have the A in vapo is an A sound. So think about it like vapo. We do use the O, and then rub is just the schwa sound. And Vicks has the I vowel. So Vicks, and the stress is on ve. So Vicks Vapor Rub, Vapor Rub. And then I don't know that brand, mentholatum. Mentholatum, but we would probably stress on the lay. Same again, A like they. This would be men, voiceless th, mentho. The O would say an O, and then latum, we would make this into a flap. Mentholatum. That might be part of the Vicks Vapor Rub branding as well. Yeah, hope you're feeling well, not needing that for for a chest cold or illness. Okay, question about in everyday conversations, do native English speakers not know or understand some words? If yes, how do they do? Well, sure. I mean, there's always a possibility that someone is using a vocabulary word that someone else doesn't know. If they don't know, depending on who they're talking to, they might say, oh, what does that word mean? Or a lot of times I think they will guess based on the context, or they might ask a question to double check that they got the meaning correct. Or they might just pretend that they know. And if it doesn't really matter for understanding the meaning of the conversation, they'll just note that word. Many times we increase our vocabulary by encountering words that we don't know and being able to tell from the context what that word means. I tend to, I think, listen and try to observe. I might look up the word later if I can remember it. Or yeah, sometimes I do just ask like, oh, wait, what do you mean by that? Or what does that word mean? I'm not familiar with it. It depends on the context, but most of the time in conversation, people aren't using very complex vocabulary. So oftentimes it doesn't come up because we're just talking to people at the same level who have the same similar vocabulary. As a non-native speaker, you might encounter more words that you're not familiar with, and I think it's always okay to ask, oh, what does that mean? The person may be able to use that word and not necessarily be able to define it. That happens to me sometimes where on the spot, sometimes it can be hard to say exactly what something means. You just know how to use the word in context. So be aware that it's always good to to say, oh, that's a great word. Can I look, I'm going to look that up, and don't be afraid to admit you don't know something and check it out. Depends on the person's personality about whether they're going to ask for more details or even notice that there's a word that they don't know. Great. Okay. Lots of wonderful questions today. We have a question about the S sound in miss and the Y sound in your. So if they get connected or assimilated in don't miss your class. So let's look at that phrase. Don't miss your class. So when I say don't miss your class, miss your class, don't miss your class. I do think those are linked together where class is going to be longer. So all three of these words are going to be shorter. Don't miss your class, miss your. So the S and the Y come together, but neither of them changes really because of that. So the S sound is a continuing sound. Don't miss your class, miss your class. I think you just might notice there's not a break. Like I don't have to say don't miss your class. What does get changed is often rather than your with the or, it'll become more like a your. Don't miss your class. So that's one place where we reduce. And then of course the don't rather than do not. You already noticed that. So yes, they do link together, but they don't really change as a result of being linked together. Great question. Okay, we had a question about Confucius. So second syllable stress, we have the reduced vowel here, so it's going to sound like kun, or there will be a little schwa there, kun. And then for the few, the letter U has the two sounds here. It has the gliding y and the u. So it's confu. The letter CI say the sh sound. And then the OUS just says a schwa. Confucius. So that's the English pronunciation, Confucius. Thank you. Okay, great. A few more questions and then we'll wrap up for today. It's nice to see so many of you here. I'm glad you're able to make it even though it's Sunday rather than Saturday. And let's take a look at your additional questions. So we have a question about in the word mother, do we pronounce it more like a short schwa? Yeah, okay. So for THER, we basically use this because it's in the unstressed syllable. So for mother, we're going to have the and the mother, there. So I don't want any sort of length there because my ma syllable, that's where I'm going to have more of a clear vowel, and there is really quite reduced. Mother, father, brother. Otherwise it would sound like mother, too strong, or mother. I don't want any changes here. I just want a short little unstressed I usually write it this way, mother, but it's one sound. And if you're used to using this symbol, the unstressed that's the one you want in that context. Yeah, very good. Okay. We have a question about luxury and luxurious. I do have a video for these two, but let's briefly cover them for you. So luxurious. So for luxury, there's two correct pronunciations. I can either do so luxury, where I'm not releasing that G, and I have the j sound like measure or visual. Luxury. So that sounds like luxury or luxury. So the X can also be a k and a sh sound. So either voiced or voiceless. So some people say luxury, some people say luxury. In luxurious, we only use the g sound and we stress on the j syllable. So we have lug with a pretty short little vowel here. Luxurious. And as I go from the E to the eus, you're going to notice there's a little vowel to vowel linking there. So we do get a little bit of a y sound there. So with luxury, you can be voiced or voiceless. With luxurious, there's no voiceless option. Yeah, good words. Thank you. Okay. We have a question about some pronounce after with a, as in black, and others say after, like after. So I'm not sure what you're asking about because the a in black and the a in after, those are the same. In black, it's also an a. So maybe you're saying you notice some say ah after with an ah sound, like father. That would be more British English style, though. In American English, after is always an a sound. Maybe some East Coast, I do know that some people on the East Coast say rather than rather, and they may do that with after as well. I don't think that's as common though. So Typically, American English for after, you want the ah like black, not ah like father. Okay, great. I'm trying to make sure I get to each of your questions. Sorry if I don't get to all of your duplicate questions or if I missed anyone, because we do need to wrap up shortly here. But I'll just take a quick gander through what's remaining. Whether or not Americans pronounce hold on with a flap, yes, we do. Because when we link that D to the hold on, we use a flap there. That's a good point. So the D, again, if it links to a vowel, can become flapped. Same as a D in the middle, like in bedding. That's also a flap sound. So hold on, hold on. I don't need a strong D. I don't need hold on. I don't have a big burst of air there. Same thing happens in like had it, that's a flap, and get it, that's a flap. So D and T, when they link to a vowel, get flapped. Very good. Okay. English teachers often say their short sounds like pick and long sounds like peak. But when you sing, yeah, anything could be long or short depending on the singing. So that's why I don't use long and short when I'm talking about pick and peak. That's taught sometimes in school for like understanding the letters, and E is a little bit longer than I, but the only real main difference between them is tense and lax and height. So the E is high, tight, and lax, and the I is slightly lower. I mean, this is tense, and this one is lax. So I do have a video going into a lot of detail about the lax I, a little bit lower, and the tense high E. The duration depends on the context. So if I'm saying city, for example, I have the quote-unquote short I here and long I here, or the E here, but this is short and this is long in duration. If you can hear it, city, this is short. And so long and short ends up being not a helpful teaching tool in my book, so I use tense and lax. And you're right, I might have to sing, that's what I pick, I'm going to peek at you, peek it. It's going to be fast depending on the rhythm of the song and depending on speech and the rhythm of the sentence. So I don't use that terminology. It's just to label, it's a way of labeling the vowel sound. And in these two, yes, peek is held a little bit longer than pick. But if I said, I can't peek at the pick, I can't peek at the pick, pick is going to be longer because it's stressed, and this is going to be shorter. So I do have a video about these specific words and vowel length and context. So if I can remember to after class, or if you leave me a comment after class, I'll send you a link to that specific video talking about those vowels and vowel duration in more detail. Sorry I don't have time to get into it now or to get to all the rest of your questions, but it's so great to see so many of you here. If you recap and you write your question to me in a comment, I'll link videos for you, or I can cover that in a future class. And I'll be back again next weekend with another live class. Thanks so much for all of the wonderful questions. Don't forget to check out the resources here on the channel and on our website, speechmodification.com. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Nice to see you all this morning.